So as Bob Giles said on the previous panel, a general license is a category of licenses. There's essentially 3 categories of individuals who are allowed to travel on a general license without seeking permission from the Office of Foreign Assets Control, from OFAC, before leaving. So those categories of people are full-time journalists and people who write for newspapers, magazines, and whose work is going to be publicly disseminated. They are allowed to travel to Cuba on assignment. So as Bob Giles said, they can't go on vacation. They have to go on an assignment. So if they are doing a piece, for example, comparing health systems, they can travel to Cuba to look at the Cuban health system and do research while they're there on a full-time basis, looking at the health system and then coming back and writing a piece about it. They can do a piece on the impact of U.S. policy on the island, the impact of the embargo, or the impact of the travel ban. So full-time journalists on assignment can travel to Cuba. Now, I think that's probably not very many people in this room today. However, the next 2 categories of people, full-time professionals going to engage in full-time research and full-time professionals going to a conference, are probably the vast majority of people in this room are full-time professionals and could be able to go to Cuba to do some kind of research or to attend a conference that's related to their full-time profession. And that's what I really wanted to talk about today. So the first one of these, let's talk about the full-time professionals who are going to be engaged in a program of full-time research. Now, the research must be full-time. That means you have to prove that you have a full schedule of research, and I'll talk a little bit later on about putting together this full-time schedule. You have to be on a non-commercial academic nature of research. So this means you can't be going to research business opportunities on the island or the ability to export something to the island. You have to be going to do research that is related to your full-time profession. So if you are some kind of scientist that studies lizards, and this particular type of lizard happens to live in Cuba, you can go put together a full-time schedule of research and do research on this type of lizard living in Cuba. That is perfectly legal. The other piece is that you have to prove that there is a likelihood of public dissemination of your research. Now, this can be interpreted very broadly. It could mean you're going to post the information on a blog. It could mean that you're going to post the information onto your website, or you're going to put it into your newsletter. There's a lot of ways to interpret the public dissemination likelihood portion of the requirements here. So the key thing to remember, I think, for both of these categories is that a lot of what OFAC is doing is really intimidating people and trying to make it seem as hard as possible to go to Cuba. So the second one is full-time professionals who are going to go attend a conference. So it's very similar to the full-time professionals who are going to do full-time research. You have to go to a conference that is related to your full-time profession. So say you are an attorney and you work on labor rights. Well, every year the American Association of Jurists puts on a conference for labor attorneys about labor issues in the Americas. So this year I actually went on a delegation with the National Lawyers Guild to attend this conference, and there were about 30 attorneys. We all went on general licenses and had no problem coming back through customs. You have to be able to prove, though, that you are employed full-time in a profession that's related to the conference that you're going to. The other caveat about this that was, I think, barely touched upon that's really important to remember is that the conference that you're going to must be sponsored by an international organization. This means that the conference cannot be organized by an organization that's headquartered in the United States or in Cuba. And they must regularly hold international meetings. So this means you could go to a conference that's sponsored by an organization in Cuba, in Europe, in Asia, in all of the rest of Latin America. It just cannot be headquartered in the United States or Cuba. Now, there are a number of conferences that are going on all over Cuba, all year, all the time. And Marisol Charter's Bob Giles has a list of these conferences. The vast majority of them are, to be quite frank, organized by organizations in Cuba. But there are a number of conferences that many of the people in this room and across the United States could qualify for that are not organized by an organization headquartered in Cuba. And many of us would qualify for these conferences. So the things that you need to travel on a general license. There's been a lot of talk of full-time professional and full-time schedule. So what you want to do before you go, you need to put together 3 to 4 items that you want to have with you as you're coming back through customs. The first one of these, and probably the most important, is your full-time schedule of activities.
This is all on a handout that's either people already got or it's on the table, right?
Yeah, there's a yellow handout right here on the table. So all of the information that I'm saying is on this handout. We can pass it out as I'm speaking or right after the presentation. Okay, so you want to have essentially 4 things before you go to Cuba. You want to have your full-time schedule pre-set up. And what you want to do, print out your schedule. Make sure that you have the list of people that you're going to meet with, the places you're going to meet with them, have the time, and you need to account literally for every single day that you're going to be in Cuba. If you're going to be there from Monday to Friday, have all of your activities from Monday through Friday written out on this itinerary so that if you come back through custom and they question you about your full-time itinerary, you can show them and prove to them that you do have a full-time itinerary of research activities. The second thing that you want to have, and this is probably equally as important, is a resume that demonstrates that you are a full-time professional and that you are going to a conference or to conduct research that is related to your full-time profession. So if you are the scientist who's studying lizards, you want to put on your resume that you are a scientist and you are employed in studying, rare reptiles or something like that, so that it demonstrates that you do actually have full-time employment in an area related to what you're going to go do research on. That is crucial. The other thing to have, and this will probably help you avoid a situation if the customs agent doesn't know what the exact regulations are, it's good to have a printout of the OFAC regulations with you when you go. You can highlight the portion where it says what the general license is and who qualifies for it. I was recently, when I came back through customs, I was asked, where's your license? And I said, well, I don't have a license. I travel on a general license. I'm a full-time professional. And I got out the regulations and I said, and look, it's right here that I can go on this general license. I qualify for the general license. And after that, it was fine. They let me through. So it is important to have the proof that your schedule is a full-time schedule of activities, that there is this license in existence, and that you qualify for the license with your resume. You may want to also take, somebody mentioned before, business cards, and if it's possible, a signed letter from your employer saying, yes, you do engage in this kind of research or this kind of activity, and your trip to the island is related to this. So those are the kinds of things that you want to take with you when you're coming back from the island to prove that you do qualify for the general license. So the sort of final last thing that I want to talk about is the more logistical details of getting to the island. Whether or not you need a travel service provider, and whether or not you can go through a third country or only for the United States. So there's this, I think, common misconception that if you are going to travel through a third country, that that's illegal. That is incorrect. If you are going on a general license, you can travel from any country in the world that you want to Cuba, Jamaica, Mexico, Canada, anywhere that you want to. As long as you're going on a general license, you can travel on out of one of those countries and on another air carrier. You do not need to travel through a travel service provider. However, I do want to say that having experience with this, it is much easier to travel with a travel service provider. And not only that, they're also the most up-to-date and the most familiar with all the regulations. So traveling with a travel service provider and having them help you book your flight and make arrangements while you're on the island can be very helpful and really facilitates the process of traveling. So I want to say thank you to all the travel service providers out there who've really been helping us out these past couple of years with everybody's travel. The final thing is that if you have never been to the island before, and if you do not have any contacts on the island, as you can imagine, it's probably pretty hard to set up a full-time schedule of research. It's going to be hard to say, well, I'm going to meet with X, Y, and Z person at this time because you don't know that person. But what is very fortunate is that there are a lot of people in this room here today, organizations like the LOG, like WOLA, and like others, who do have contacts on the island and who do have contacts with people here in the United States who have these contacts on the island. So what we want to do is say that if you are interested in traveling, and if you have a group of people that are interested in traveling, please contact us and let us know what your specific project or what your idea of research or what the conference that you want to attend is. Because it's possible that we can hook you up with the contacts to make a full-time schedule of research possible. Thank you very much.